course. So welcome to Exceptional Board Member. Take it to the next level here at the Nonprofit Coach. I am Elizabeth Finlayson. I'm the CEO and lead coach of the Nonprofit Coach. And our mission is to create a fairer, more equitable and inclusive world filled with empathy and beauty. And we do this by supporting our nonprofit clients with coaching, strategic planning, fundraising, board training, and group support like this. So let's get started. Okay, so just so you know a little bit about who we are and what we do, we provide services to nonprofits, including transformational coaching. So there are lots of nonprofits that can't quite afford a development person yet, or maybe their development person is inexperienced, or maybe that person is wearing a lot of different hats. And so coaching is a really good way to get some expertise in without having to outlay a lot of money to pay for somebody to go do your fundraising. So I really recommend that if you're on a tiny budget, you just need to get better fast. We do board trainings and retreats, which I want to just point out since you're here because you're interested in boards. We have an online grant writing course. We record these webinars as we are right now, and they're on our YouTube channel under Elizabeth Finlayson. And we do hands-on fundraising and consulting through capital campaigns, grant writing, strategic planning, marketing services, you name it. So that's just a little bit about who we are. We are based outside of Chicago, and our clients are across the United States, and we have a couple outside of the United States as well. All right, so I do want to tell you what this is versus what it is not. This is part of a free bi-monthly webinar series. We actually created this out of the pandemic. Really early on in the pandemic, I suddenly had this realization that we were about to go into the third recession of my fundraising career. And I thought, oh my goodness, I bet a lot of nonprofits don't know some of the things that I know, and they are about to go down. And so really quickly, we started to mobilize and get information out as quickly as possible into people's hands because we didn't want to be losing the great nonprofits that are out there on the front lines doing the important work that you do every day. And from there, we realized we started to get a following nationally. We said, you know what, let's keep this up. So we now do these twice a month for about an hour. They're usually either a general topic overview or they are a deep dive into a specific slice of a broader topic. As I said, Fred here has been a guest speaker, and he did something really just on strategic networking, right? So really specific, giving people specific skills. We've had like Google ads, right? Has been like another one. We have guest speakers, but these are not meant to replace any paid training or services or development that you do with me or anybody else. So just to put it in context. All right, let's keep going. The first thing I want to do is I want to get a sense of actually who is here. I think it really is helpful for us in framing our conversation. So I'm going to put a poll up on the screen, and I'm just going to ask you to take a second to answer this. And really the question is like, who are you? What is your role in a nonprofit? Are you a board member? Are you a staff member, a volunteer? Are you maybe thinking about joining a board, or are you here in some other capacity? I can see these coming through. Ooh, 83% complete. And all right, let's put this up and kind of take a look at who we are. Okay, you can see the majority here are board members, but not by any means the entirety. So 60%. We have quite a few nonprofit staff members, so welcome. Thank you for being here. We have our great volunteers, and I'm so glad we have someone who's considering joining a board. I hope that this is a good experience. The last time I had someone considering joining a board, they actually realized it wasn't for them and they didn't go on a board. And I actually think that's a fantastic outcome because if it's not for you, you shouldn't be on a board. And then we've got some others. Does anybody want to just take a moment and say, what is your other role with a nonprofit? No? All right, we're going to keep going then. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about here is why are we talking about boards? So here's our staff member, Tina, and she wants to know, why are we talking about boards? And I have to say, this has taken me a little bit longer than I think maybe it should have to realize that boards are fundamental to the success of nonprofits. Having been on the staff side for a long time, and particularly on the fundraising side, I was just really interested in how are we getting in dollars? 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 That was really just my primary focus. And I worked with boards really, really closely. I've worked with some fantastic board members, but my interest was really in how do they help forward the fundraising? That was really where I was thinking. And so to me, a good board member brings in dollars, a bad board member doesn't, keep moving on. And I've really come to see that it's just so much more than that. And as I've worked with my nonprofit clients over time, I started to realize that your boards are going to make or break the success of your nonprofit sometimes. So let's get into the details so that we can make sure that our board is our engine and they're moving everything forward. All right. So when we're talking about boards, there's often a place where we're talking about who is on this board. And we're looking at who can be joining our board, who can be augmenting the fantastic people that are already there. One of the things I like to do is just go through this and really look at, is this person the right person for your board? So we're going to say, meet Stanley here. He is in his 50s. He has been in business for 30 years. He has risen to a high-level manager position at his company, and he is smart, he is knowledgeable, and he is committed. So I would like us to talk about, as a group, for a second, would you take a moment? You can either raise hand or you can unmute, and just tell me, do you think Stanley would make a great board member for your organization, or really any organization?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you, Janine. Can you tell us why you think so?
Well, the main thing that stands out to me is he's seasoned. He's risen to a high-level manager position at his company. So that takes a person with experience, and it says he's committed. So that's very important to the success of any board, a committed individual.
Excellent. Okay. Jane, you've got your hand up. What would you like to say? Oh, can you unmute?
I think the committed part is really important. He's smart, knowledgeable, and committed.
Committed. All right, Fred, go ahead, jump in.
I'm going to go with maybe.
Maybe. Why?
I'd like to know a little bit more about his area of expertise. I have a board with a lot of different people on it, but we have some gaps in what we need to do, where we need expertise added to our board.
Very good. And I've got Benito in the chat says yes. I've got another comment here. Given our board says, I want to know more about his background to see how he fills some more gaps. Yeah, same as what Fred just said here. And I think this is a great point. First off, I want to say everyone who realized that committed was in there, right? That's crucial, because somebody can be fantastic on paper, but if they're not committed, sometimes I find as nonprofits, we commit a little too quickly to bringing someone on the board when they check a lot of the right boxes. And without that commitment, they can be the biggest disappointment on your board, right? You hoped that they were going to be contributors in a lot of different ways with all that expertise and that management that we've talked about here, right? So committed is crucial, right? But we don't know more than this about Stanley, right? So one of the things we don't know about Stanley, we don't know if he has to travel a lot for his position, for example. He may be committed, he may not be available, is one of the things I would check out. And I think both Fred and I think maybe Kristen might be the other person mentioned about how does he fit our current board? I think if I look at someone like Stanley, and I would look at maybe some of the boards I've worked with, he might be a big step up You know, I mean, be like, oh, thank goodness you're here to save us, right? And that's why we might be really eager to jump. But we want to be careful and make sure, you can hear my dogs are getting super excited out there, that he is a good fit within that board. So if we have a lot of Stanleys, it may turn out that the average age on our board is getting a little high or a little bit low. It may be that we've got a lot of people with business expertise, but we don't have anybody who's looking at the area of expertise of our nonprofit. We don't know whether, you know, maybe he's more visionary and more strategic, but we actually need somebody who's good at breaking down numbers or doing something that Stanley doesn't do. So I think all that to say, we want to see how he fits in totality. And so, yeah, not really a right or wrong answer, but we just want to make sure that there's a good fit. And haha, here's a little tricky part here. He's never been a board member. So that information wasn't there at first, right? He's never worked at a nonprofit. He's never asked his family and friends for money. Has anybody ever brought someone on their board who was so great on paper, but when it came time to do it, they weren't quite sure how to fulfill the role of a board member? Has anyone had that experience? Yeah. I see Fred raising his hand. Yeah. I have definitely had that experience where people are, you know, just fantastic people, but they may not know what to do on a nonprofit board. So that's where we want to make sure that if we get a Stanley, that we also, as board members and as staff members, can support Stanley or anybody else coming into our nonprofit. Okay, so let's talk about our model here, right? So nonprofits are not the only organizations that have boards, right? Corporations have boards, but let's look at some of these fundamental differences here. So our board of directors, they're volunteers, and we bring them on because they have good expertise in general, like with our Stanley, but they may not have nonprofit expertise or experience. When we have a nonprofit, the people who are consuming our service or our product, depending on what it is, and the people paying for it are separate people, right? So if I'm a homeless shelter, the people who are getting those services and the people who are paying for it, two different groups, right? And some nonprofits have more than two groups, depending on what's going on. This can create more than one target audience. So there's more complexity sometimes built into a nonprofit, despite often the smaller budget sizes. Which gets to the next point is we are often underfunded in the nonprofit sector. As a board member, maybe you've been spending a lot of time talking about budgets and fulfilling those budgets. On the staff side, you know, you maybe often try to figure out how to do more with less, as the saying goes. There's little business development. This is one thing is I've seen transitioning from the nonprofit sector to the for-profit sector. There's a lot of interest in investment and development and moving forward. There's often a feeling in the nonprofit, if you spend money, you're taking it away from the people that you're serving. And we've had this long time, we've had this model with these overhead myths, and we don't want to put too much into overhead. And so what happens is we may not be getting what we need actually to grow and succeed on the nonprofit sector. I have to say, being on the for-profit side, I feel a lot less guilt when I need to invest in something to make my business stronger than when I did when I was on the nonprofit side. And so those are some of the things that you might be struggling with as a nonprofit. Now, on the corporate side, the board of directors are paid. They often have relevant experience to that. So maybe if you're a printing company and you've got a board, you may have brought people in who've got that printing experience. Or they definitely have some kind of relevant experience is why you got them on the board. That's why I'm going to pay them money. The end users and payers are often the same. So again, in that customer model, if I've got, again, a printing organization, the people who are buying it are the people who are getting it. That works out pretty well. Usually, hopefully, there's adequate funding for the appropriate staffing And the business development activities are considered essential to growth, right? Which are some of the differences. Anyone have anything they want to say about that, or anything they're observing or noticing? Go ahead, Fred.
One significant difference is on the corporate side, you are trying to maximize profit for the owners. That's the ultimate goal. You may have additional goals, but that's the ultimate goal. Obviously, with the nonprofit, you don't have owners.
That's a great point. And I think really on the nonprofit side, we're trying to maximize impact. And if people don't keep that into consideration, I had a conversation with a board member recently where they wanted to get rid of programs that didn't create revenue for the nonprofit, when we really need to be looking at it from an impact perspective. If it has a lot of impact, then that would be a strong program for a nonprofit. I think also, in the past, you've said, Fred, that being a nonprofit board member, instead of being paid, you're actually paying for the experience to be part of that nonprofit board, right? So it's like a reverse financial model. I see something in the chat, so I'm just going to check in here. Having a great board orientation will help kickstart the success of, say, our Stanleys. Yes, very good, very good. All right, let's keep moving forward. Okay, so we want to look at the core roles and responsibilities of the nonprofit board member. All right, I am going to just ask people to either put in the chat or throw out there I'm looking for big main areas that are part of the board of directors' responsibilities. Does anyone have any that they can suggest?
Fundraising.
Fundraising. Oh, yes. The one that takes all of our time, right? Fundraising. Great. Anything else? Any other areas?
Well, obviously, serving the organization stakeholders and managing the budget once you get the funds, establishing policies. And I would say your annual report is very important. So setting those goals and meeting and measuring the goals and achievements that the organization has accomplished on an annual basis.
All right, well, thank you, Janine. So yeah, I think that actually covers like 3 of the 4 areas that I wanted to point out. That fundraising and the managing budget, I really put that together under finance, right? So when you talk about the programs and how they fit and making sure we're serving our constituents, that's really under our mission and vision. And you mentioned policies, Janine. So I'm actually going to start putting this, I'm gonna check the chat first. ED support and oversight. Thank you, Allison. Yes, yes. Strategic planning. Yes, that's definitely part of that mission and vision. Promoting programs, right? We are the spokespeople for our organizations. Absolutely. And I really put that under our fundraising role, but it's so much bigger, isn't it? And I see auditing our annual gala, events, speaking with directors. Absolutely. Community advocacy and governance. Thank you, Kristen. Yes. Responsibility for the performance of the executive director. Excellent. And overseeing personnel. You guys have hit all the areas. I think you are actually my top performing webinar attendees on this. So governance and compliance, mission and vision, HR is that oversight of the ED. And let's kind of look what's in here. So governance and compliance, we talked about this. I think, Janine, you mentioned policies. Ensure legal and ethical accountability, ensure effective organizational planning. Someone mentioned strategic planning. Yes, absolutely. Mission and vision in some ways feels like something when we've signed on, it's there, or we're, it's kind of all in the air around our nonprofits. But every time we're looking at our programs and looking at their effectiveness, it's under mission and vision. So when we're monitoring that to strengthen the organization's program and services. We're hiring and supporting our chief executive as a partner, and we're assessing them, which can be uncomfortable, right? If they brought us on, we know them well, things like that, but that's part of it, is that assessment, but it also helps that executive director to grow. We're ensuring staff oversight and morale. I do want to emphasize this is top level. So this is like looking at the turnover rate of the organization versus making sure Candy sent an email at Thursday at 2:30, right? You know, so it's like, it's a higher level perspective on what's going on internally. And then we mentioned finance, right? So one is this like financial oversight of the organization. We have a fiduciary responsibility to effective financial oversight, making sure you understand those financial statements when they're coming to you, reading through the budget, asking good questions. But that last one, this fourth, number 2, ensure adequate resources fundraising, right? Ends up taking up all of our time. I told you I'm a fundraiser, right? I want it to take all of your time. I want you to do all of it, but it can get out of balance. We need to make sure that these other areas are covered. And I'm going to say something here that might seem crazy, but for all of these activities, like, I'm not going to say it till after I do the next poll, because I'm going to do a poll first. We're going to do a poll. Okay, here we go. So we talked about these 4 areas. I want you to say which of these 4 areas is the most challenging for your nonprofit. All right, about a third of the participants are in. Okay, 61%. All right, all right. So let's share the results. Okay, so if you can see this on the screen, it is almost always the case that finance component is the #1 component. Usually that is the one that is the greatest. I will tell you the number 2 that always comes in when we do these polls is HR. Maybe you're getting in the money, but you're losing staff constantly. That's something I've seen with organizations, or they're a challenge to manage. This probably also maybe relates to funding. If you're not able to pay your staff at a high enough level, sometimes you're losing them because of that. The other thing for all of us to just know is many of us are in fields where there's a lot of secondary trauma. You know, if you're going into people's homes or you're dealing with people who are experiencing a trauma, that's not going to be easy work. And so it can be very challenging to do this work, I think, as you know. But it's interesting, right? This governance and compliance can be a really big thing. And mission and vision, you know, definitely that's the core of what we're doing. These are really, really important. This is actually the most balanced group I've had attend this. It's usually been like off the charts, finance, fundraising, then HR, and then, you know, maybe a couple of things. But here's what I want to say, which I was going to say on the previous slide, but I decided to wait, see what you said. I look at governance compliance as the secret engine of your board, okay? And if you get that working really, really well, the other areas will begin to take care of themselves. I'm gonna say that again. If you get that area working really, really well, the other areas will begin to take care of themselves. Because your governance and compliance is not just like, yes, checking some boxes, we did that. It's really about feeding and nurturing your board to be as effective as they can be. And if you're doing that, the other areas will start to work. So let's say that. Okay, I see a chat comment. More specifically, fundraising. Yes, fundraising, fundraising, fundraising. Okay. What do you need to ask of your organization to be successful? So we've been talking about what are the expectations on the board members. So you've joined up. Some of us, we join our board. Maybe we did it as a favor to a friend, a family member. That's how sometimes we end up on these boards. And maybe we don't actually know what we're supposed to be doing. Some of us have been professional board members for a long time. And, you know, we know what to do, right? But it's a two-way street. there are things we need to be asking of our organization. It can't just be that the board has to do all these things. The organization has things they need to do as well. So let's look at what those are. All right. So it had come up on the chat, having a board orientation. It is one of the things that really kicks off a good board experience, is to get steeped in the culture, to get to know both the real positives and the strengths of the organization. A good board orientation gets you excited about the mission and reminds you why you're so glad you said yes to this. Makes you excited to be part of this fantastic group of people that are going to be like on the front lines doing this great work. But it also gives that person the tools to then be a good advocate for the organization, to know what the expectations are, to understand what the challenges facing that organization, right? I cannot emphasize this enough, but clear fundraising expectations. Having been on the staff side, I will tell you that I have failed my board members in this area before, and it's why I know it's important. It's so easy when we're bringing on, say, we're going to go back to our Stanley, right? He seems great. But what if we never told Stanley how much we expected him to raise, how much we expected him to donate? Maybe we're currently not happy with what the other board members are doing, and we expect him to come on and do more, or do better, or do the same as our highest performing board member. If we're not clear about what those expectations are, we can be pretty certain that Stanley will fail. And it's not fair to bring people on to fail. And I have been in the situation where when a great board member recruits another potential board member who looks great on paper, and then when we go to have that meeting to see if they're a good fit for the organization, and the fundraising expectations come up and they're like, I don't do fundraising. I'm not going to do that. And as a fundraiser, I have to say, I think a little bit inside. But at the time, I was 20 years younger and a lot nicer than I am now. And I was like, okay, that's fine. And I've seen it happen so many times. And when that happens, I will tell you that the people who are in charge of making sure that that budget is fulfilled, and I'll tell you it should be the board, but that fundraiser, that executive director, they're going to spend the whole rest of that year being disappointed, no matter what they said, no matter how many times they told you could miss the board meetings or don't raise money, it's okay. They will be disappointed. And one of the best things we can do for ourselves and each other is to not put each other in a situation of resentment. We want really straight, kind, respectful communication with each other. It's one of the best things we can do for each other as board members. Okay. Yes, go ahead, Fred.
Well, first of all, for the one board I'm on now, and most of the boards I've been on, we've had a board member responsibility document that anybody coming onto the board has to sign. And so they're clearly aware of the fundraising expectations, as well as meeting attendance and anything else. I wanted to get your opinion. Often the fundraising item is a give or get. Either give a certain amount or raise it, or a combination of both. Do you think that's a good thing, in the respect that I have a number of board members that give what's required and then don't help anybody else do any fundraising?
Ooh, such a great question. Yes. So we could honestly spend so much time on a give get, but I'm going to give you my quick answers. So give gets have gone up in popularity and then gone down a little bit. They are a little bit of a double-edged sword. So what I think is fantastic about a give get is you do have clear expectations. You are not saying that the entire money has to come from the board member, but they understand that there's a responsibility to funding a percentage of the budget as a board. So that's really great. Where it can be tricky is, you're right, some people don't treat it as a minimum, they treat it as a maximum. And so really, as part of working with your board, I suggest that your nonprofit staff member, your fundraiser, your board chair come together, and they meet with every board member. And you really say, let's talk about your giving for the year. And we want to make sure that all board members are giving it what a stretch gift is for them. Now, I have worked with places where a stretch gift, we had someone on the board of a mental health organization that I was on the board of, and his stretch gift from his very small government paycheck was $10, and it was a really moving experience. And we had someone else on that board that their stretch gift was $10,000, but everybody was giving a stretch gift for them. We also want to be aware that we're in this environment where there is much more awareness around equity issues. And so one thing I would say is there are times when either because somebody is going to provide, say, $50,000 of budget relieving in kind per year, something like that, maybe we'll make up for a lack of a board gift or fundraising. Another time is you might say, wow, we want to bring on some people that are representative of the population we're serving. Like if you're serving homeless people, you may want to have a couple of people who represent those voices in that perspective. It totally makes sense to waive the give get for somebody who actually is at the table making strategic decisions for your organization. I think too often, I would say as nonprofits, we excuse people who could be giving a lot more, and then we don't even ask, like, say, a person without a home onto our board. And that's where I think we really need to look at, like, who are we giving a pass to and who aren't we? But that is my quick and dirty on the give get.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, I'm going to keep moving forward because we're at halfway to the hour. You want to have an annual meeting calendar of meetings. So when is the board going to be meeting? That's often kind of described in your bylaws what a minimum is. Again, just like a give get, a minimum doesn't mean you only have to do the minimum, but you definitely want to make sure you're in compliance with your bylaws. The best way to make sure that your board is showing up at the right date and time is that you've got it set for the year. Particularly if you've got Stanley and he's traveling for business, he may be able to set his calendar based around your board meetings. Or he may be able to say, I'm going to make sure I can take that board call from my hotel room at 7 p.m. that night and get it set up. So you want to make sure that you're making it easy for people to fulfill the expectation. Oftentimes by state law, you are required to provide pre-meeting documents a certain amount of time before your board meeting. Make sure you're doing those things. I want to say something just in general. I've seen with organizations during the pandemic, we all got thrown for a loop, right? But I have seen some organizations really not be in compliance with those minimum state laws of how often to meet, having their documentation ahead of time. And I am not saying this to throw any nonprofit staff member under the bus. I have mentioned that this work is hard. It is tiring. You often know you could make a lot more money if you were on the for-profit side for all the skills and expertise and sometimes advanced degrees you had to get to do it. But we do, as organizations, we need to make sure that we're getting this stuff to boards ahead of time, creating a balanced budget. Balance doesn't mean that you spend every penny. It could mean that you've created a little bit of a surplus. And I will say ongoing training and educational opportunities. If we're on the for-profit side, it's really kind of no question that you're developing and moving forward. On the nonprofit side, we need to be doing that as well. All right, I'm throwing a lot at you as fast as I can, and I drink a lot of coffee. So I'm just going to stop and ask and see if anyone has questions or comments. All right, let's keep going. All right, so we've got another poll here. Oops. All right, so we just talked through these expectations for your nonprofit. So I'm just going to ask you, is the nonprofit that you're working with or thinking about working with, are they spelling out their expectations? Are they meeting this? right, a third have responded. Oh, halfway. Almost there. All right, I'm going to end and share. All right. So as for, did your organization clearly spell out all their expectations? We've got some sort of, we've got a yes is a winning. So woohoo! If you got a yes, that's great. If you've got a no, that is okay. There's always room for growth, right? I would say, like, with everything that, like, when I work with a nonprofit, if you're doing one more thing than you did last year, great. Then next year, do one more thing than you're doing this year, okay? It's not that we all need to be perfect right out the gate, okay? That really doesn't work, so it's pointless to try and do it, so don't. For those of you that sort of, I just want to say that's a little bit of a trick question because I don't think you can sort of spell something out clearly. So if the answer was sort of, I'm going to say that I think the answer is a little more like no, or maybe they're doing it really well in some places and not in others. So I want you to see this as an opportunity to create this with your organization, to get these started. I mentioned that your nonprofit staff people are tired. They're really tired. The pandemic made us even more tired. So many of us organizations, and you're probably sitting in those board meetings, and first you're gonna, you're open and you're gonna have lots of kids or whomever coming in, and then, oh, now we're closed. Oh, now we're back open again. Wait, now it's hybrid. Now, I mean, the number of times we've had to think and rethink our decisions has really exhausted our nonprofit leaders, and that's from the board down. So again, these are not criticisms. These are not, your organization is failing. They're just areas of growth, things we can look at, things we can start doing, okay? And before we move on to your organization's unspoken expectations, I want to say this. If in those lists of things that you would want from your nonprofit, they're not there, or some of them are not there, here's what I want you to do. I want you to join or form your governance committee, and I want you to go through those piece by piece and say, all right, now we're going to do a board job description, guys. Okay, now we're going to do this, and just take them piece by piece. So rather than, kind of thinking about going back, we didn't do it, this is wrong, what can we do to help? What can we help take on? How do we move it forward? All right, so what are your organization's unspoken expectations? And I really like to get the unspoken spoken. I always say you could say anything to anyone if you do it with love and without judgment. So we want to bring this stuff out because this is where when we have conflicts within our board or conflicts between our board and our staff, it's usually somewhere in here in these unspoken pieces. This is a board readiness quiz that came from BoardSource, and I've actually excerpted it because there's a couple more pieces, but I need to replug in, but I'm just going to say this. Can you go around and each read one of these pieces out loud? And I'm going to start with you, Fred, if you could read the top one out loud for everybody.
I am interested in advancing a cause that I feel passionate about.
Great. Jane?
I'm curious to delve into and learn about issues facing my community and the world.
Awesome. Denise?
I am interested in new environments and experience to further develop myself as a leader.
Awesome. Ella, do you want to sing the next one?
Whew, here we go. I am interested in meeting people outside my usual professional and social circles.
Yeah. All right. Who is next? I know some of you are joining without camera. Does someone who's off camera want to unmute and read the next one?
I understand the roles and responsibilities of being a board member.
Fantastic. All right, next.
I am comfortable making a personal contribution to the organization.
Great. Next.
I can't imagine asking others to contribute financially to a cause that I am passionate about.
Yes. All right. Next person.
I have enough autonomy in my schedule to accommodate board and committee meetings.
Oh, yes. Yes. All right. Next one.
I am patient and collegial when working as a team.
Oh, anyone seen someone violate that norm? All right. Next one. Last one.
I can commit the time
go.
necessary to being an exceptional board member.
Thank you. All right, good job, guys. Can anyone see something in here that, maybe they've worked with board members and they saw one of these not being fulfilled? No? Okay.
Can you repeat the
Okay.
question?
Yeah, my question was, has any of you been on a board and seen one of these really not happen in a board member? Maybe they didn't understand their roles and responsibilities. Maybe they weren't making the time. Maybe there was a lot of conflict happening.
Yes.
Yes. Do you have a story to share with that, Fred?
Not at the moment.
Right. Those could be tricky, right?
Yeah.
They could be hard. Yeah, go ahead. Just more to say? I would say some of these seem really basic, right? Really straightforward. Of course, we're passionate, we're those things. But I'm trying to look through, I've probably seen each of these be unfulfilled in some way by someone over the course of 20 years. Whether it was a corporation putting someone on a board and so they didn't feel passionate, so they didn't really do maybe even the minimum. Maybe that sometimes people are really comfortable just knowing the people that they know. They don't want to go and meet people. It can be really hard then to take on that advocacy role for the organization. And it's okay to specialize as a board member. It's okay to say, what I have to offer is my accounting expertise, and you're not going to get a lot of invites from me. It's okay to specialize, but we still need to be hitting our minimum requirements, right? And maybe you can see, I hope that this list helps you if you're recruiting new board members onto your board, that you're looking at these ideas and saying like, yeah, does this person fill all of these? And if you look at our Stanley, does Stanley fulfill all of these? I hope so, but I really hope we ask him, right? I really hope we ask him so that when he comes on, he may not know what the norms are of our board. He may not know that we practice group decision-making on this board, or everybody always listens to the committee chairs and that's how we move forward. He doesn't know what the norms are. He doesn't know what it means to ask people to contribute financially. Is it $10? Is it $10,000? We need to make it clear for our board members, for each other. Okay. So what is your organization expecting of you? So we're looking for high-level strategic discussion when we're talking about a board. These are the people that are actually above the executive director on that org chart. And so with that being the case, we need to keep our thinking up at that top level. It's really important. We want to be monitoring financial performance. So yes, a big part of that is fundraising, but it's not the only part. If you have great fundraisers, but you spent more than the money you had, that's not going to be enough, right? So you need to be thinking that through. You need to read your board documents before you show up at the meeting. I think we've all sat in a meeting before where we nodded our heads and pretended like we knew what was going on, right? So make sure we're doing that so we can ask intelligent questions, particularly if it's got numbers. I would hate to think that fraud would be happening at anybody's organization, but you can't catch it if you can't see it. I'm sure you are working with wonderful, trustworthy people, but we all need to be paying attention to these things. One of the things that we can do as board members is to be increasing our own personal, social, political, and reputation capital that can only help improve our nonprofits as well. So as we are growing and developing as humans, as people in our industries, we're also augmenting our nonprofits. We don't want to be in the day-to-day operations. So this goes along with being strategic. So if we're thinking at the high level about how's staffing doing, how are we fulfilling our positions quickly enough, we're not in those nitty-gritty, teeny tiny pieces. And when we are doing that, usually when people go down into the details at the nonprofit, it's because we don't have enough occupying us at the strategic level. So I will say, those of you on the staff level, bring those strategic questions to your board so that they can be really chewing that over. Give them something great to do, because otherwise we are going to be in the details, right? And because fundraising is what we all spend so much of our time on, when we talk about accepting fundraising responsibilities, I have detailed a few out, like bringing event sponsors, buying event tables, writing letters, attending donor visits, asking the people that you know for a gift, introducing your contacts to the staff members. In fact, introducing your contacts to the staff members is a really great way, because you don't necessarily have to even ask them. But your nonprofit staff people are usually stuck in the office, and one day they're sending out a marketing email, and the next they're writing a grant, and then they're dealing with, someone who's come into their office, a participant, and they're having a life problem. And for them to get out of the office to all of the external events that they possibly could is very challenging. So as board members, we can do that part, and we can be bringing those contacts to our nonprofit. All right, last poll. So when we talked about, here, I'm gonna see about, I'm going to do a poll after this. So what can you demand of your organization to be exceptional? So here we are, and then I'm going to do the poll after this. We do want explicit documents. I think several of you described having some of these things. That's fantastic. So you want your job descriptions, you want your fundraising requirements. An org chart is really helpful, even though I know sometimes we're like, it's just me, that's my org chart, or it's me and Karen, that's just us. But get in the habit of creating that so that your board knows, like, who do they call if they have an idea for an event is different than who do they call if they've got someone who needs an intake service. You want them to know who they can talk to. If you've got committees, have those descriptions so they know, hey, I want to be part of marketing, or I want to be on the finance committee. I know how to do that. If there need to be networking and introducing people, what are the requirements? Please have a board manual for your board. Good policy is like a conflict of interest policy. Most nonprofits I know have that. A whistleblower policy is, I think, kind of the auxiliary piece to that. That's like kind of more coming to be more common now as well. We want insurance to cover our board members because they can be personally liable if something happens. God forbid somebody on the staff has, say, sexually harassed somebody or even just been accused, right? It's just important you need to protect that. Like we said, our board members aren't getting paid. They should be protected from liability. As you grow as an organization, you're going to need an independent audit of your finances. But we talked about a couple of things here. These are unspoken, but this open dialogue. Like I said, you can say anything if you do it with love and without judgment. The most exceptional nonprofits, as they've studied them, they have trust, candor, and respect in their board discussions. If respect is missing, trust and candor will be as well. If trust and candor are missing, respect will go. So they go hand in hand. We talked about having a governance committee, having an intentional board design. So making sure your board is, like I would say, your governance committee is the care and feeding of your board. If you're caring for and feeding your board, they will be growing, they will be respecting, they will be working, and that will feed everything else. And well-organized meetings, don't waste people's time. Don't have a 1-hour meeting last 3 hours. That's not fair. Or tell them it's going to be 3 hours and they will get a babysitter. But make sure that they're well-organized meetings. I know that a lot of us founders are creative and we have new ideas in the middle of the meeting, but we also want to have some discipline that goes with that. Okay, so now I'm going to do the poll, and I want to find out what percentage of this list does your organization provide? Maybe all of it. Yay, that's great, up to 100%. Maybe it's more like most of it, 75%, about half, 25% or less. It's okay, we can work on it. Okay, great, we're at 72%. And I see like we're kind of, a lot of us are in the middle. Good, almost there. And we're gonna, oh, perfect, everybody, and poll and share. So you can see nobody's at 100%, and that's okay. Like I said, we're all growing and developing, but I do see we've got a lot of people in the middle, so that's fantastic, right? You could probably add one or two of these things and you'd go from 50% to 75%, which is our highest number, so that is great. For those of you 25% or less, pick one thing and do it. That's what I'm gonna say to you, pick one thing and do it. This morning I did 2 sit-ups and 2 backups. I am not going to get a 6-pack from doing that, but I am going to get started, right? And I say the same thing for you. Pick one thing and do it today, this week. Now, I hope for all of you, designing documents is something that's pretty easy to do, right? We can all write things. But the things that can be hardest sometimes are the stuff on the right, that open dialogue, trust, candor, and respect. So if you're finding that those are the things that are missing, you know, do consider giving my team a call, because those thornier issues are sometimes something we have to work through, and it can take time. So I just say that there is, I hope that for those of you, that's not the piece that's missing, because the rest is just writing some documents, right? All right, I'm going to stop. I've been talking to you the whole time. I want to see what questions you have.
You had mentioned, I forgot how it was worded, that the board is not involved in day-to-day operations. So are you saying that board members should not also hold positions within the nonprofit?
That's a great question. So you may have, so it's very common for, say, the executive director to hold a position on the board as an ex officio position. So as long as they're the executive director, they can hold that position, but they're a non-voting member. And that stops them from doing things like, say, voting on their salary increases, or saying the executive director is great, right? So you don't want that conflict of interest. You may have one or maybe 2 people who do that. Now, if your whole board or staff, I think then it's time to really separate that out. Now, I will say, for those of us who don't really have paid staff, so if you start your nonprofit and you don't really have paid staff, or if you want paid staff, you may have all your board members are acting as staff members. So what I would say about that is you can think of them as 2 roles, right? So they're going to put on that hat and they're going to be the marketing director, and they're going to send out those marketing emails, but they're going to take it off when they walk into that board meeting, and they're going to say, okay, now they're going to be looking from the strategic level. If they walk in and they're still thinking about small things, open rates, stuff like that, we may not get to the place where we can actually hire in some staff, because we're still going to be down on the details. Does that answer your question, Benito?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Excellent question. Any other questions? All right. One thing I want to say is, like, thank you. You guys have actually been really participatory the whole time, which I find fun, more fun than just listening to me. I will say that at the Nonprofit Coach, we offer organizations, board development, everything from actually just going in and doing a board training for the entire board, We actually train on major gift fundraising for an entire board, but we also work with boards on recruiting quality board members, developing board pipelines, and we even do, right now I'm working with the chair of a board, and she just wanted to get really good at her role. And so we're having a coaching relationship right now where I'm coaching her through her role. We're developing documents together, and then she's bringing that on to her board. So she feels like she's really doing the best possible job that she can. And all these are available at the Nonprofit Coach. So if that's something you're interested in, please contact us, and we will, you'll talk to someone on our staff and we'll get that started. So you can see our contact information here. But I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being a fantastic group. Thank you for the work that you do in the world and in the community. Our world is better because of you, because of people like you. And I'm just really excited to be in this sector and every day work with people that are saving children, feeding people, saving animals. It's just like a fabulous, fabulous industry. So thank you for what you do, and thank you for being here today.